It takes a bit of time. There we go. Okay, now we're live and recording. Welcome everyone to Finding Freedom, a webinar where we're going to be speaking about working on your own terms as a consultant and hopefully being able to answer a lot of your questions. I'm Candela Iglesias. I'm the founder and director of Alanda, an organization that supports organizations working in health to improve their impact and their funding through better use of evidence. And I'm super happy to be partnering for this with Jamie, who has been a long time work partner. And Jamie, do you want to introduce yourself? Please go ahead.
Yes, hi everyone. It's really nice to see some familiar names on the list and to see some new names as well. I am Jamie Johnson Darko. I am an independent consultant based in Cape Town, South Africa, and I focus primarily on global health consulting in monitoring and evaluation, as well as process effectiveness and technical assistance. Thanks so much.
So before we start, there's something that we want to put on the table. We want to acknowledge that we're living through very strange times when it comes to global and public health aid and development. Jamie, do you want to speak to this a little bit before we get started?
Yes, absolutely. We know that some of you might be here sort of by default of going through layoffs or going through a challenging time where the sector really is contracting. We have to be honest about that. And it's a very difficult time. So just acknowledging that not everyone may have had this in their game plan about thinking about becoming a long-term consultant, but that it might be more of a stopgap measure or just something you're exploring out of necessity more so than thinking about it as a long-term career path. And that's totally okay. That's great, actually. We do see consulting as a really flexible a set of skills, a really flexible mechanism. So it can help you if you are looking to develop a portfolio career or using it as this stopgap fill, or if you want to look at a longer term consulting career. So we do want to just acknowledge that we know many of you may be going through some hard times. I don't think there's anyone in global health who has emerged unscathed in one way or another from the challenges. So we hope that you'll find this useful, and we hope that this will give a little bit of additional thinking in terms of routes and options that you might have available.
And also to acknowledge that despite the strange times we're living, people are still finding new jobs every day, and we're seeing it on our feeds, and people are still finding consulting opportunities. So this is happening despite the challenges, right? So always try to keep a focus on the positive. Okay, great. Just some housekeeping. If you have a notebook or you have an open document, we are going to be doing some work here. It's going to be a little bit practical and hands-on to get your thinking going. So please be ready to take some notes anywhere you want. And also, we have enabled the Q&A chat. So if you have questions, put them there. If you're saying hi and telling us where you're joining from, please put them in the chat, okay? Great. Moving on.
So in terms of what you'll walk away with today, what we really want is something that's very practical that you can actually see. So we would really like for you to be able to walk away with a clear vision of what your life could look like as a consultant, to be able to have that chance to reflect for a moment and think, what would this look like if I did things differently? The second is we have a 3-step roadmap for making the transition. And these are kind of the essential 3 things that you have to do to be able to start into consulting. And it's, of course, easier said than done when we're breaking it into these 3 pieces. But what we do want is for you to have a starting point to jump off from. As Candela mentioned, we really hope to be answering your most pressing questions. So we have a bit of Q&A. So please start thinking already about anything that is burning for you, and then provide some concrete next steps to begin your journey.
So we wanted to start by telling us a little bit about our journeys and how we got started into consulting. I've been doing it for 10 years, and Jamie even longer than I have. Jamie, do you want to maybe get us started and tell us a bit about your story?
Yeah, sure. So I became a consultant by accident. And I see from some of these familiar names, you may have been with me when I was in those moments of trying to decide what I was doing with my life. I was working at the Global Fund in Geneva about, now it's about 13 years ago. And I was doing my MBA. And I was doing it while I was in this high pressure, high intensity job. And was really feeling like I needed to take a step back and I needed to reflect and think a little bit about where was my career going? How was I going to use this new MBA world that I had kind of stepped into? And I had new connections, new ways of thinking. And I really wanted to pull back a little. And so I was very fortunate that through the Global Fund, I was able to take a year-long leave of absence from my job. And in that year, I decided to explore. And I was doing my MBA at the same time that I was visiting friends and family. And I decided it was time to pursue a lifelong dream of moving to Cape Town, South Africa, which I'd fallen in love with years before. And I had always wanted to live there, but it just never quite worked out. So I said, this is my chance. So I contacted an old employer who has programs in South Africa and asked if they might have any work that I could do on a short-term project basis during this break. And fortunately, they said yes. And then there I was, packing up my bags and settling into Cape Town. So that's how I ended up getting started. It was accidental. And then once I was here, I basically realized that this is pretty good and that I was going to stay. And so made the choice to then step back from the Global Fund. And even at that time, I still didn't know I was going to fully take up consulting as a long-term plan. But I did know that I was ready for a new adventure.
That's amazing. That's great. So maybe let me tell you a little bit about my story. I think it also came as, looking for different opportunities. After 10 years in the biomedical world, I switched into public and global health, and I was working in my home country, which is Mexico, in a government hospital, and I was ready to shift into more global health projects. In 2015, we decided to move to Norway for family reasons, and when I started researching a bit my opportunities there, I realized Oslo was a small city with a very limited number of job opportunities. And I started wondering whether consulting, which I had done a little bit one-off before, could be a better way to go about this. And then I found a couple of small consulting companies that are sort of like umbrella organizations. And I talked to them, and I think it was just a good timing, a lucky coincidence, because these organizations were both very much aware that the world was changing, that they needed younger blood, that they needed more diversity in their teams. So they were both very keen to invite me to work with them, and also they didn't necessarily have people working in health. They were working in international development, but did not have a health consultant. So eventually I decided to join one of these organizations. It was not like a big, this was not a salary position. It was just, working under their umbrella and brand. But it made things so much easier for me because, being in a new country, a little bit like for you, Jamie, having someone to show you the ropes, to show you how to do things. And, I had no idea, where am I going to find clients? Where am I going to, how do I even write a proposal? I had no idea what I was doing. I was jumping in. I was enthusiastic. I knew I could make it work. I knew I could get the work done. But actually, winning those contracts was the part that I didn't really know about. And also all the business side of things. How do you set yourself up, etc. So that was, that was an easy, smooth way to get into consulting. But Jamie, tell me a bit about how life looks like today for you as a consultant, because I think that is also, that can be the fuel that powers this transition for many of us.
Yeah, so one thing about consulting is if you ask year to year, my life looks quite different in terms of the types of clients that I'm working with. So right now, I am working with two longer term clients. So I've been on two long-term projects. One is with Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and that's based in Geneva, but I'm home based. And that's about 80% of my time. So that is probably the biggest contract I've had as a consultant in this time, where it is like the single biggest bulk of my time. And that actually was intended to be 100%, but I had asked if I could cut that down to 80% because I really wanted the opportunity to still keep my other client, which is the Pandemic Fund. Candela and I work together with the Pandemic Fund as M&E advisors. And I still wanted time for other things, other project-based work, and also time with my family. So I negotiated that at about 80%, and I'm juggling between those two clients, as well as doing things like developing this content and looking at how I can also expand my skills and expand other opportunities. And how about Candela for you? How does it look?
Yeah, so I spent a couple of years with this organization, and then I started to get more and more work coming from other places and not through this consulting company. So I decided to go out on my own, and I was working as a freelance consultant for a few more years. And then in 2020, out of a drive to build something bigger and to build a team and to be able to tackle bigger projects, I founded Alanda. And for me, that has been the path, right? I mean, freedom means different things for each of us. For me, it also means being able to work on projects that I find meaningful and that I find, that pull me. And those can be consulting projects, but I'm also trying to build our own projects. And we've built courses within Alanda. We've been building science communication tools. So building different things that I care about, that has been, I think, the definition of freedom for me in this consulting journey. Apart, of course, from having the flexibility to work from two countries that I call home, and being able to arrange my schedule in a way that works for me and for my family, that has been super important. Do you want to add anything to that, Jamie, or should we go on?
I think we can go on. Thanks.
Awesome. Great. So why are we telling you this? I think it's because, there are different ways, there are different paths into consulting, and it can be something that you do for a while. That's at least what we thought it was going to be. And then we ended up loving it, and we stayed, and we built our strengths, and we built our consultancies. So it's okay also to do it for a while and as a temporary measure, depending on what works for you.
Great. So what we wanted to do is take a few minutes and just reflect and have you all think a little bit, maybe just close your eyes for a moment and think a little bit about what this could look like for you. Is it about location freedom? Is it about having more freedom in your daily life? Is it about having a greater diversity of projects that you're working on or different clients? Or is it just having a paycheck at this point in time? Really, if you close your eyes for just a moment, think for a second, how could consulting fit into your life? And what do you think your life would look like if you took this path? We'll just give you a minute to think about it. And when you're ready, you can just jot down a couple of keywords, just as a little reminder about some of the things that you would like to see and things that your life could look like if you took this path. Excellent. Seeing some great things in the chat here. Flexible time and exposure, ease, self-motivation, diversity and autonomy.
Yeah, feel free to share in the chat or keep it to yourselves, whatever feels more comfortable. But if you're comfortable sharing, that's great.
Agency, flexibility, continuity. This is great. And I'll say from my side, and I think I can also speak from Candela, these really are the realities of how consulting has worked for us. That it has given us a lot of this flexibility, a lot of control and self autonomy, and excellent family flexibility. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you all for that. I hope you can keep that image in mind as we go forward, because sometimes, fear pushes us back, and having that vision, that image of what like things can look like, can really be the fuel moving us forward. At least I think it was for me. Okay, we want to move on now, and we promised to talk about this 3-step roadmap for making the transition. And I'll introduce it briefly, and then we'll talk about it a little bit in the step-by-step way. You don't need, I think the main message here is you don't need to do everything at once, right? You can take things step by step and focus on the most important things first. The step number 1 is identifying your value proposition, identifying, what is your niche, what makes you different, not necessarily what makes you different, but what are your strengths, where do you want to add value? And also, based on what the world needs and what you can be paid for. Number 2 is you do need clients, of course, and you do need to win your first assignment. So how do you do this from your current starting point? And number 3, then you can start setting up your systems for success in a more organized manner than what sometimes happens when we do it a little bit more ad hoc. There's a lot to do, but not everything is urgent, and we'll walk you through it. Jamie, do you want to add something, or do you want to start with step number 1?
Yeah, let's get right into step number 1. Awesome. So step number 1 is identifying your value proposition. And for those of you who have ever worked with a career development, career coach, you've probably seen this framework at some point. This is the Ikigai framework, which is based on this traditional Japanese concept, where essentially the sweet spot is this Ikigai, which is the overlap of what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. I have potentially a slightly more pragmatic way of using the Ikigai framework than I think some career coaches might encourage. But when we're looking at this from a consulting perspective, the reality is you need to be able to get paid. And so when I'm thinking about this framework, I start in the orange circle. And I think this is particularly important at this particular time for our sector, where the reality is what you can be paid for has shrunk. This little circle has shrunk. And I think we have to be honest and realistic about that. However, it's not gone. It's absolutely not gone. And the types of work that you can be paid for are also shifting. So part is paying attention to the trends in the sector, seeing where organizations really do need additional support. Even in this environment, it is offering certain opportunities. So suddenly there's a lot more interest in impact measurement, in donor diversification, in income generating streams. There are profound shifts that are happening in the sector that are also shifting what you can be paid for. So in a consulting portfolio, a lot of your projects will be falling in this profession space because it's what you're good at and what you can be paid for. It is really, really great when you can overlap into this Ikigai space, which includes what you love and what the world needs. Generally, when we're in this social impact conversation, most of what we can be paid for is what the world needs. So there's already quite a strong overlap there. But it's really motivating and gives you kind of your full drive when you can get that full alignment with your Ikigai. When you're doing what you love, you can be paid for it. It's what the world needs, and it's what you're good at. Knowing what you're good at is also sometimes a little bit tricky. Here, the starting point would be noting down your technical skills, your kind of hard skills. Are you great at data analysis? Are you an HIV clinician? Do you speak 14 languages? These are kind of your hard skills, but you also need to be thinking about your soft skills. And soft skills are really important in consulting and are particularly going to be important as AI takes over some of the more automated functions. And so really thinking about what are the soft skills that you're bringing to an equation and how do you pair them up with your hard skills to be able to align with what you can be paid for. With what you're good at, sometimes you don't know that you're good at something because you've never done it before. And this is one piece where consulting is a playground in some ways, where you may have an opportunity that's a bit of a stretch in a direction that isn't something that you've done, and you have to be brave and you have to figure out how to do it. And so it's a really interesting way of expanding out this circle by testing yourself in ways that you might not have otherwise tested in a traditional staff position, where you may not have quite as much diversity in the types of projects that you're doing. So my advice on using this framework, it's great to know what you love, and it's great to incorporate that. Again, what the world needs, there's a strong overlap with in our sector of what you can be paid for. But as long as your portfolio is covering the profession piece, that you can absolutely be paid for it, as well as some aspects where the Ikigai really is being overlapped with what you love, then that kind of is the drive that can give you a satisfying consulting portfolio. Candela, anything that you would add to that?
No, I think it's well said. And, build it over time, right? Maybe your first consultancy projects are at that profession intersection, but as you become more sought after, as you become stronger in your consulting skills, you might be able to better identify also where your passion is and where your vocation is, and get more projects into your portfolio that fall into the Ikigai space. So, it's over time, and not every year is as good as the previous year, and some years are just great, right? Like anything else, but we do have a lot more flexibility in finding that space.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Okay, step number 2. This is where where things get real. You really need to work on finding your clients. Similar to like when you're looking for a job, there's sort of 2 parallel paths to do that. One is going into all the websites where you can find terms of reference and requests for proposals, etc., and just sending out as many as you can and playing a numbers game. That really doesn't work. I don't know if Jamie has a different opinion on this, but I've done it. The success rate is so small, right? So it's useful because you get to see what is out there and what skills are needed. But the better pathway is to work from where you are, from your starting point, and your starting point are the people that you already know. It's much easier to win an assignment, to win a tender process, if you know someone in the organization, or if the organization knows you, or if someone can recommend you. So it doesn't have to be someone in that organization, but someone in a different organization that knows someone. So you need to be making the most of your network, and you need to be building relationships. And these, let's just be clear, these are not like sleazy relationships where you always have an agenda and want something from people. These are, for real relationships that you're building because you like people, because you've worked with them, etc. So the first thing is mapping out who you already know and who already trusts you that you do really good work. That is usually your current employer, your most recent employer, and your colleagues. And we understand that there's, it's like the whole basket has been thrown in the air and the chips are still falling everywhere. So this might be, in flux today, but it will eventually settle down. So do list these people out. That is super important. And then move on to your second circle. Who are your past employers and colleagues, and where are they at now, right? go talk to them. If you haven't talked to them in a while, let them know that you're starting this new path. It's important to remember that people cannot help you if you don't tell them that you need help, right? So, you need to put yourself out there and say, hey, I'm doing this transition into consulting. These are my skill sets. These are the type of projects that I'm interested in. These are the type of organizations that I think I can help. Just keep an eye open for me. Let me know if you hear about anything, and read, have a system to touch base with the people regularly, because everybody's busy, and it's not that they don't want to help you. Things just slip from people's minds. So you need, with your first two circles, you can be touching base regular. This is people that know you and trust you and will be happy to recommend you. And then you can continue expanding those circles and actually writing down those names. You can put, like, circle 1, circle 2, circle 3, however you want to name this. My list is called like contacts A, B, C, D. The next circle is your collaborators and peripheral professional contacts, people that you have, connected with during your work and your previous jobs. And the next circle, you can expand it further to alumni, in the place where you did your master's, where you did your PhD, as well as social and community contacts. There might be people that you more or less established a weak relationship with on LinkedIn. Now it's time to strengthen that relationship and keep on building it. And then, of course, or in parallel to keeping in touch with the people who already know you, you can start targeting new contacts in the organizations where you would like to do some consultancy work. And that is very easy to do through LinkedIn, but you need to do it in a way that adds value, right? If you reach out cold and say, hey, I'd be an excellent consultant for your organization. You should hire me right now. What are your needs? That's not nice. That doesn't work. We're all human beings. So why do you want to connect with this particular person? What do you have in common? How can you add value to whatever it is they are doing, right? It might be, resharing whatever posts they're sharing on social media. It might be following up on LinkedIn in a private message. It might be sharing an article that you think it's interesting for them. Always think about adding value into those relationships. And I think that's a much more authentic way to connect. So this is the way I think it works. It's the way it's worked for me. It's probably the way it's worked for Jamie. So you need to be doing 2 or 3 things in parallel: tracking your contacts, building your new relationships, and tracking assignments and organizations, and figuring out if someone can connect you to that organization. Jamie, do you want to add anything before we do a quick exercise?
I think one of the biggest things for me was really thinking about how to re-engage with some of those collaborators. So here it's in this third circle where it's people that I've engaged with, but very briefly. These aren't people that I have a long history with. Maybe it's someone that I, met at a meeting, 3 years ago. And thinking about how to re-engage with some of those connections. And I think particularly from people who are coming from the USG contracting space, it may feel like your network has fallen apart overnight, that many of you are in the same boat of now being open to work. But do look at these further out bubbles where, if you're feeling like you don't have enough of a strong network that's still employed or in a position to be able to offer consultancies, take a look at these collaborators and see how to re-engage, especially those that are in more diverse organizations or fields that may still have work available.
Yeah. So what we want you to do today is actually leave with the starting point of these lists. So grab your piece of paper or your open document, and we'll give you a minute. This is like a game. Write down as many names as you can think of across these categories, the first names that come to mind. And then you can find excuses for not reaching out to them later. Right now, we just want you to write down those names. So we'll give you 1 minute, and then we'll move on. Go ahead. I don't want to distract people, but just so everybody's reassured, we will be sharing the recording via email to all of those who signed up to the webinar. So don't worry about that. How many names have you gotten already? Five. Okay, let's get it to 10, Luz. Come on, you can do it. You can continue this exercise later, but do continue it, not just keep it, because you were here in the webinar. Keep on doing it. 4, you need, push yourself to find 10 names. You definitely know 10 names of people who know your work. That should be something attainable. 10, 7, that's great. Awesome. Okay, we're going to move on because for the sake of time, but continue building on this list. Come back after the webinar when your ideas are still fresh and continue building on this list.
And if I can just say the importance of this networking piece, I think I'm trying, at least 90% of my work has come from people that I used to work with, or they connected me to someone else. So it's 1 degree of separation. And I'm trying to think of actually any examples where that has not been the case. So it really is a critical piece of being able to secure assignments. Okay.
Absolutely.
So the third step is setting your systems up for success. And one of the things that in conversations with people who have reached out to me about becoming consultants, they say, oh, I've designed my logo. I think I have my name of my consulting firm that I want to register. All of that is not necessary. It's really, those are things that are nice to have, saved for later, if ever. So I've been consulting now more than 12 years, and I use a Gmail account. I do not have a website. I have no logo. I will say I am probably prepared in terms of my own systems for that. But it's to say you don't actually need a lot of that stuff unless you're choosing to, as Candela has done, to really develop a consulting firm. You don't need a separate business registration. You don't need a lot of these other things that often are where people end up feeling overwhelmed and getting bogged down. So what we wanted to do was separate out what really is the priority, who you need to get your first contract, and what can you save for later, if ever. Your priorities are to register as a freelancer or as a sole proprietor. And this looks very different in different countries. So, for example, in Norway, Candela had to register uniquely as a sole proprietor, whereas I'm based in South Africa and my only registration is related to my tax status. So I don't have a separate process that I need to go through. It's really just through the way that I'm filing my taxes. You need to set up an invoicing system, and that sounds much more intimidating than it is. This can be something that's online. There are a million different different options for invoicing systems, but it can be as simple as Word documents where you fill in with an invoice number, your client information, your billing and your bank details, and you're keeping track of your invoice numbers and when you've gotten paid for those. It can be that simple. It really doesn't have to be as challenging as or as overwhelming as sometimes that can feel. And I remember my very first invoice, sitting there not knowing how to number it. I was like, should it be 001, 0001? And so at the end of the day, it actually doesn't matter. Ensuring that you have a strong and complete LinkedIn profile. And this is really tied to step 2. All of that networking work that you're doing, you need people to be able to find you and understand at the outset that you're offering consulting services and what those services are. You're highlighting your value proposition upfront. And this is really important. And I've seen where people haven't necessarily fleshed out their LinkedIn profile, or they aren't making it clear enough that they're looking for consulting engagements. So just the other day, I was looking at one profile, and it was a great profile, but it sounded like a staff role. It sounded like someone who is still in a staff role. And so if I'm looking to hire someone, I'm not sure if they actually are interested in project-based work. Formatting your CV to match the project requirements. This is like applying for a job. You need to make sure that you're highlighting the experience that they need. That's clear from the terms of reference to show that you have that experience. eventually, as you really develop your consulting portfolio, you'll want to reformat your CV into a consulting format CV, which does look a little different than an employment CV. And there you want to be highlighting a subset of projects that you're doing. Often you can't fit all of your projects over time, but you want to reformat that. You don't need that for your very first contract, though. And finally, tax status and payments. So you can't avoid taxes. And so this is something to figure out early so that you don't get in any tricky situations. As I said, sometimes your registration status automatically shifts your tax obligations, and that could be your tax timelines or your tax amounts. But you do want to figure that out, and that differs by country. So it's hard for us to give that advice up front here, but do make sure that you're checking that out for your particular circumstances. Candela, anything else that you would highlight here?
No, I would just say, the tax status thing can feel intimidating, but just talk to an accountant. It's a small investment that you can do up front, and then you're setting things correctly from the start. And they'll guide you through it, right? We don't need to know everything.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's kind of the theme, actually, of all of this, is you don't need to know everything. Part is being willing to accept the fact that you don't know everything and that you will figure it out as you go. And I think that's also one of the benefits of getting to know other consultants, getting to also have a peer network that you're able to exchange with, where you can ask a quick question. I think I've asked Candela 1,000 questions over the years of, hey, how do you approach this? How do you do this? How do you handle this? So it's also really nice when you have a peer network that you can engage with to problem solve around some of these things.
Absolutely. Okay, now it's over to you. So we have a bit of time to answer your questions about getting started into consulting, and then we'll spend a bit of time presenting the course that we have been developing to help people start their consulting journey. But over to you. We're happy to answer questions. Please pop them in the questions chat and we'll get it done. You get first pick, Jamie.
Okay, we'll start here. Is it recommended that one has worked at one of the large global health institutions before one gets into consulting for networks as well as experience? How is this valued versus local health departments, which are more applied and hands-on, flexible versus high level? This is a great question. So it's tricky, and it depends on where the type of work that you want to be doing. So I will say, working at the Global Fund and now at Gavi, the networking opportunities are exceptional. I will say that. And so that has been a huge source of other opportunities for me. But it is by no means a prerequisite to go into consulting by working through these entities. Even if you've been working in a local health department, you can also be looking at other local work, as well as regional opportunities, or if any of that local work has included engagement with any of these bigger organizations, think about your networking circles and reach out to those and try to establish the relationships with anyone in those kind of peripheral circles that you can engage with. So it's absolutely not a prerequisite. And it also depends on the type of work that you're looking to do. If you're not looking to do that global level work, if you want to be doing more hands-on local work, then you can look around at other organizations, look at community organizations, or look at other governments within the region that you might be able to work with.
Yeah, that's great. I would just add that, I did not have those connections when I started. I had never worked in one of these larger organizations, and it still worked out very well for me. Okay, next question. What suggestions do you have if I want to consult on top of my roles? Do you suggest talking to my employer? I don't want to ask for permission, but I'm not sure how they will feel about it. You could get into legal trouble. So I think the recommendation is do lay out the reasons why you want to do this, and you don't necessarily are asking for permission. If that's not what you want to do, you can be informing people. There might be some clauses in your contract that don't allow you to do this, so you better check your contract first. That's what I would say. Anything you want to add, Jamie, or next question?
Yeah, just to really re-emphasize checking your contract. I have had a situation where someone that was working for me had in their contract, they were meant to be exclusive, and it turned out they were doing consulting on the side, and that was a real challenge. So just make sure that you are that you're aware of what you've signed on to with your contract. And also then think a little bit about whether there are ways of framing that with your employer that don't make it threatening to the employer that you might want to leave, but that maybe you're just interested in skills development by taking on some other work, or otherwise framing it as benefits that could also benefit the organization you're currently working for. Where do you find consulting opportunities? So this is the burning question. So there are two different pieces. One is, I would say probably 80% of the opportunities that I have worked on over the last 12, 13 years have never been posted. So it's not something you would have ever seen posted on a website, that these have really come through networks. And that is not necessarily fair, but that is really the way that people are working, is they want to work with someone that they trust. And so many of these consulting opportunities are coming through connections. That being said, there are also opportunities that are posted. There are RFPs that you can look on. You can look on organizations' websites. You can also look at some aggregators. And LinkedIn, I've found, is really useful for finding actually much smaller projects that I wouldn't necessarily have known about. It's not these big organizations, and often I haven't seen those on aggregator websites like Idealist or DevX, but there are smaller projects that I've seen advertised on LinkedIn that that look very interesting. Candela, are there other sources that you usually use?
I use ReliefWeb a lot, and we actually have a list that our team goes through on a regular basis to see if there's something that might be interesting. But we don't really apply unless we have a very clear value proposition, or we know someone in that organization or in a sister organization. And then we reach out and we say, hey, we saw that you have this RFP. This is very interesting. We sort of let them know in advance that we're considering applying. So it's a bit of mixing that network thing with the actual looking for what's out there. And we have applied to RFPs without knowing anyone. We have won a few, very few. But yeah, we can share some of those links in the newsletter, in the emails that you will be getting after this with the recording. I can tackle the next question. Is there a lot of travel in your job, or is it mostly remote these days? I think it really depends on the projects that you choose to do. For many years, what I wanted is to get out and to see the world and to understand better how things looked like in communities, what the communities needed, what the projects looked like on the ground. So I took on mostly projects that would allow me to travel. These days, it's a little bit different. What I normally do is I partner with people locally who can support any work in the country that in different countries or different areas that needs to be done. But that's a choice, right? You can always sort of partner with others to get that piece done if you don't want to travel. Jamie, do you want to add something to that?
Yes, I similarly, when I first started, I wanted like all travel-based work, but I've since shifted to mostly remote positions. It's a mix of what's out there. Some require travel, some don't. So as you're looking for opportunities, and also as you're engaging in conversations, think a little bit about what you'd like, and be sure that when you're having conversations that you're positioning yourself to take on that role as you like, either with travel or without.
Yeah.
I can do the next South Africa question. Excellent. How do you determine your rates for different tasks? So calculating your rate is a tricky thing. And especially when you're first starting, you're like, I have no idea. I'll also say that even still, there are times when I'm like, ooh, I don't know. Do I need to increase my rate for this client? Or Is it time that I do a rate increase? And actually I went for way too long without increasing my rate at all. The way that you calculate your rate is figuring out all of your expenses. And a huge piece of this, if you're coming from a staff role, is taking your salary plus thinking about the cost of your benefits, all the things that you would have to pay for separately if you're not in an employment role. And you need to factor in the cost of health insurance. You need to factor in if you have any, what am I thinking of? Any other like disability insurance or any of those other things that would normally be rolled into your benefits package, and think about the cost of those. And if you'd like, you can also give yourself a little raise, a little pay bump in calculating your rate. And then you're dividing that by how often you think you're going to be able to have work. So one of the other pieces for consulting is you have to plan for what we call the feast or famine cycles. There are times that you might be in between projects, you might not have enough work, and you need to make sure that you're earning enough during the work times that you can cover any breaks that you might have in employment or in consulting opportunities. So making sure that you're factoring that in. One other piece is I use a different rate for local clients than I do for international clients, because that's the nature of the market. If I'm working with a South African client, they can't pay the same rates that clients can in Geneva. So using a little bit of differential pricing so that you're able to do the work with the market where you are.
Absolutely. So that's one of the trickiest questions, I would say. And, it's okay. You're not tied to a single rate per life, right? So you can be learning don't be afraid to establish your first rate. If it's too high, the markets will let you know. If it's too low, you'll figure it out very quickly as well. And, you're not tying yourself to that initial rate in any case. And we delve a lot into a lot more depth into this question during the course that we're going to be talking about in a minute. So I think we have time for one or two more questions, and then we'll continue, and then we'll have a bit of time at the end of the webinar to continue answering questions. How do you navigate working in another country while residing in another? I think it really depends on your passport and your work status. So I have had a bit of challenge with a Mexican passport in some countries, but mostly when you are coming to do work in a country with an organization that's inviting you, for example, to conduct an evaluation or to conduct a training, you will get the letters that are needed that will help you get, like a temporary travel visa, a business visa, whatever it is, so that you can go into the country and do that work. Most of the times it hasn't been a challenge. It can be because, in Mexico, we don't have all of the embassies in the world, and so on, but there's normally workarounds for that. And the other way would be to partner with local consultants.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just do one last question, Candela, and then we can save the rest for afterward, hopefully. Your work is basically your brand. What if you don't do a great job in your first few projects? Oh, I feel this one deep in my heart. I actually had a long conversation with Candela about this, about when I first started, I kept hearing this message of you're only as good as your last project. And it was deeply scarring for me. It was really, really challenging because it put so much pressure on to always be delivering the very best thing, and not really giving myself room to learn and to be able to say this is the first time I'm doing consulting. I don't really know exactly how to approach this. If you don't do a great job in your first few projects, often we're not great judges of ourselves. So first is you might have actually done a better job than you thought. But I would reflect on that experience and say, what have I learned from this? What can I do better? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad consultant or that you shouldn't be consulting. But what it might mean is that you need to think a little bit. Maybe it's that you haven't quite figured out how to work fully independently. And maybe it would help you to go in as part of a team for a few assignments to kind of find your feet. Maybe it's that you were so eager to do a good job that you jumped right into finding a solution for your client, as opposed to, wait a sec, maybe I need to unpack the problem a little bit and make sure that I've done like a proper root cause analysis so that I'm finding the right solution as opposed to just finding a solution. So I would really use that as an opportunity to reflect. And don't feel like that's going to cut you off forever. You do have a network, you know other people. Maybe that individual client won't want to give you another chance, but there are certainly other people who know you and who may have seen your work in other contexts that would be willing to give you another assignment. So don't let it get you down, and definitely don't let that influence the way you're delivering the project, where you're putting too much pressure on yourself and not actually being open to learning and maybe not getting everything right the first time around.
And I think one important thing to remember is, as human beings, we remember the relationship more than the outcome. And this is true with doctors. I mean, there's all these studies that show that doctors who are kind and gentle and that people love them, even if they get it wrong in their diagnostic or their treatment, they won't be sued. Right? I think it's similar. When you establish good relationships, when you are a good listener with your clients, with your partner organizations, they appreciate that, even if the work that you developed was not as good as they would have expected. And if you're willing to listen to their feedback and to potentially do a second round, that's appreciated. I think that relationship is sometimes matters more than the actual product that you developed. So keep that in mind as well. Don't shy away from those hard conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are going to keep answering questions, but we first want to talk about the course that we've been building with Jamie. Just because we have been receiving all these questions about how to jump into consulting. So we are launching the pilot version of this course, and we are hoping to provide value to people who want to start their consulting journey. The course is titled Launch: How to Build an Independent Career in Health and Development. And it will be going on for 11 weeks from 10th of September until 19th of November. And what we want to make sure is that by the end of this course, by the end of this program, you would have been able to define your consulting path and which model of consultant works best for you, whether working independently with a team under an umbrella organization, for a larger organization, what is that best fits your needs. Also, how can you position yourself as a consultant? And we've been talking a little bit about that in step 1 of this path, but working much more in depth into that. Also for step 2, how to find and win assignments, actually walking you through the whole process, actually helping you with exercises to build your net, to build your relationships, and to develop strong proposals. What's in a strong proposals? We are providing exercises, templates, and tools, and we will be we also want to make sure that this question about the rates, it's a hard one. We acknowledge that. How can you set your rates and negotiate with confidence? What do you need to take into account? How can you keep on tweaking this as you go on? And the other 2 parts are the business side. We cannot ignore the business side, but as we saw in step 3, not everything needs to happen right now. So walking you through the business side so that you set yourself up for long-term sustainability, for avoiding this, feast or famine cycles that Jamie has been talking about. How do you set yourself up for success from the start? This is what we hope to share with you from our own experience and that of from our colleagues who have been doing this for a long time. And we want to take you also from the fears and the questions that you have today to that initial vision that we talked about in the beginning. How can your life look like as a consultant, and having that as your north, as your guiding star, let's say, to try and build that dream life as a consultant, and not just getting into consultant and continue to struggle as, you know, with a job or otherwise, because that wouldn't be the goal here.
Thanks, Candela. So really, we want to help you to learn the mistakes that we made, or that we can help you avoid those. And so this program, it's online sessions with the two of us, and also with peer interaction. That would go over the course of 11 weeks, and it would be on Wednesdays from 5 to 6 in kind of Central European, South African Standard Time, which is 11 to 12 Eastern in the US. We are, as Candela mentioned, it's really about practical exercises. So really trying to already start and get the building blocks in place so that you're ready to go if there's an opportunity that's becoming available to you, that you feel enabled and empowered to take that up. And also you find ways to proactively look for new opportunities. We have this toolkit to accelerate your system setup. That includes things like an invoice template, a project tracking sheet, just those little things that help make things work smoother and better. We also are offering 1-year access to the materials in the recording. So if you miss a session or you realize down the road, oh, I have no idea how to do XYZ, you can look back and still access the materials. We are also we have tiered pricing available because we do want this to be accessible. So because this is the pilot, we're discounting by 50%. So 349 euros for US, Middle East, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, and 125 for Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And all our ask is from this discount is to provide us with feedback, because this is our inaugural cohort. And so we want to be able to figure out what's working, where more information is required, and really how to make it more useful and impactful for you.
Thanks, Jamie. And we're going to put the links in the chat for if you feel ready to register to this course, if you say, you know, this is what I really need to be able to launch my consulting. I don't want to be doing this on my own. I want the guidance and the accountability. It's not just about the guidance. It's also about the accountability to get through the hard steps and the scary steps. The links are in the slides, but we'll also add the links in the chat. Julius, if you can do that for us, please. And we are closing on September 9 because the first live session with us is on September 10. We have limited spaces available because we might want to make sure that it's a small enough group so that we can really guide you and really continue to improve and tweak the training as we go, the course as we go, since this is our beta, our piloting course. We understand that people might have a lot of questions. We're going to stay on to answer any questions that you have. If you have like, you know, this is my situation, would this work for me type of conversations, we urge you to book a call with us. We can chat about it, and we'll let you know if we think this is a good match or not. I think, you know, it's not a good match for everybody. You need to be ready to take this step. If you're not there yet, then it might not be a good match for you. If you've already taken this step and you've win some first assignments, but you're wondering, you feel like things are not right, you don't have the right setup, this might still be for you, even if you already have a couple of assignments under your belt. So we're happy to chat. We're also going to be adding the links to booking a call with Jamie or with me in the chat, so feel free to book those. They will happen mostly this week because next week we're launching. So if this is for you and if you're ready to take that next step, we really hope to see you in the launch course. We're going to be creating, peer networks, partnerships, and making sure that you're setting yourself up for success and getting a quick first assignment under your belt. We are happy to stay on and continue. We have like 15 more minutes, so we're happy to stay on and continue answering your questions, whether you have questions about the course, And whether you want to discuss the other questions that we didn't get to, we can also do that. So please stay on, go check. You will get all of this information in an email tomorrow with the recording, and you can spend some time deciding whether this course is for you or not. So if you have a bit of more time, we're staying on for answering any questions. Jamie, do you want to take one up maybe?
Yes, I'm just trying to see. Okay. Where are we? Okay. In terms of how to decide if it's better to register or to work as a firm versus as a solo consultant. So one thing is you don't necessarily have to choose. So you can do both. There are opportunities that are bigger for bigger projects where you do need a team, and there working through a firm is typically going to position you better than necessarily trying to go for that as an independent consultant. There also is an opportunity, as Candela has mentioned, of when you're working within an umbrella framework of a consulting firm or with other consultants, you can learn a lot from that. So it depends on the project, and it depends on what you're really looking for. I do a blend. Sometimes I'm part of a project team, and sometimes I am consulting independently.
And Jamie and we really like working together, so we're always looking for opportunities to do that. It's really great to have someone that you can brainstorm with. There's a first question about the course that I want to make sure I answer. Is this aimed at someone wanting to start their consulting journey now, or would it be suitable for someone in full-time employment now, but thinking of the next 6-12 months, for example? That's a good question. Do you have the bandwidth to take on this course right now? Because the idea of the course is that it's hands-on, that it's practical, that you're actually doing the exercises, that you're actually, if you find the right proposal, you actually sit down and work through it. We have work huddles where we're going to sit and work together and get that accountability going. So you need to have the bandwidth. That is one thing. Of course, you can register now and always come back to it later. We are hoping that if we see that there's a real need for this, to continue to offer this course next year, but we can't promise that right now. So if you see this as, I really want to join this because, consulting is on my mind for next year. Sometimes it's also about, the fears and the monkeys in our heads, I call them, that are talking to us and saying, oh, you're not ready. And sometimes going through these courses gives you, you're like, oh, come on, this I can do, this I've already done. Sort of check, I'm ready to get going. So it might accelerate your path. You need to answer that question for yourself.
I would also add on to that. One other thing is that, as Candela had mentioned with the networking piece, it's also about making that an exchange and not making it purely transactional, that you're asking for work. So having a long runway, if you already know you have employment for 6 to 12 months, that gives you 6 to 12 months to already start those networks, start those engagements, build up those relationships, so that when time comes and you do need to get some consulting work, that you've already established those foundations, and then you're better positioned to either ask for consulting work or be able to respond when an opportunity comes up.
Right, yeah. Alison is asking, is the course only aimed at beginners, or could establishing consultants get value too? I would say beginners, but both people who have not yet won their first assignment and people who have won, 1 or 2 or 3 assignments, but they don't really have a good setup. They don't really have systems in place, and they're feeling like it's a bit wobbly. This will give you the structure that you need, and the systems and processes that you need to keep getting clients in the door. And potentially, we don't know what we don't know. And for me, that was the most important piece in my journey. The people that I started working with, they knew what I didn't know and what they needed to teach me. So that piece was really crucial for me. So yes, I would think if you're very well established and have been doing this for many years, this might not be for you. Otherwise, you might get some value.
The next question, since many opportunities are not posted, can I now include you as part of my network for prospective consulting opportunities? Great question. Already making use of the peer exchange here. What I would say is please do connect with us on LinkedIn. I regularly share any consulting opportunities that come my way that I think look interesting, and we'll repost those. And reach out to us. Let us know what you're working on. Send us a message. Schedule a call if you'd want to discuss further.
I'm going to go back. I don't see any more courses, any more questions about the course. If there's any, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to go back to some of the previous questions. Are there any added advantages of bidding as a firm rather than a solo consultant? There are some tenders that specify that they only accept solo consultants, or they only accept companies. In many cases, they accept both. As an individual consultant, you can still partner up with someone else. Some organizations are happy to hire separate people that are part of a team independently. In other cases, you might need to sort of subcontract. Someone in the team might need to subcontract the rest of the people. As a firm, I think, at Alanda, we're a small firm. I think a small organization. I think for us, for me, the advantage has been that we have a small core team, and that basically means that we can split the work a little bit more, right? So we have people who are very good at quantitative analysis, so we give them that part and so on. So even if we have like a small team of consultants, we also have these research assistants that support our work, and that allows you to be more efficient and also to potentially do more projects simultaneously. But as a solo consultant, you can also partner up with other people, so it's not necessarily a downside.
Are there any serious legal immigration matters you feel people should be aware, check on when you want to work remotely for an organization in another country or continent? So one thing is, please don't mess around with your visa status in terms of making sure that you're abiding by the visa restrictions of anywhere that you're living. And certainly if you are traveling for work, that you're on the correct visa. We wouldn't want any tricky situations associated with that. The biggest thing is really having an understanding of what the terms of your contract are. So if you're consulting with an organization that is based in another country, that they know that you are where you are based, being transparent about where you're based, and that you have to have proof that you have the correct visa to reside in that country where you're residing. For me, I think that's been the primary legal language around international clients. It's just, I have the right to live in South Africa. That is where my base is. That's been the biggest thing for me. Candela, I don't know if you have any other experience.
No, not really. Same for me in Norway. Having that residence permit that as a consultant, you need to change it. When I change it from being a sole proprietorship to being employed by my own company, then I needed to change my work status. These sort of things you need to have very much, you need to be in line with the legal situation in the country where you're living and where you have your working permit. There's a question around PhDs, and so I can answer that question. How important is a PhD or similar advanced degree for obtaining work? A PhD is a degree that is given mostly for research purposes. You have a lot of great skills, methodological skills, coming from a PhD in terms of scientific thinking, the scientific method, etc., that are very much applicable to the work that we do. But you absolutely do not need a PhD. I don't think I've ever seen a single tender or request for proposals that requested that you had a PhD. It might be the case if it's a very research-oriented consulting project. Otherwise, I don't think you need it. And I don't think clients really prioritize this. If you do have a PhD and you have not worked in consulting before, there might be a bit of an adjustment in terms of, this is not as rigorous as clinical research, as lab research. a lot of the things we do is a lot more qualitative in nature. So there might be some adjusting for you in terms of that. But definitely, if you do have a PhD, your skills are very much needed, and you wouldn't have any trouble other than that adjustment.
Thanks, Candela. I think we have time for one more question. So I will take on, how do you make yourself look available or open to projects while still wrapping up work 70 to 100% on current projects for several more months? This relates to the feast and famine cycle, where you do need advanced planning, but you need it to be really right-sized. And sometimes that getting that balance is tough. So you want to be looking for new work, but not too soon, because you still need to finish off the projects that you're working on. And you don't want to wait all the way until your projects have ended, because then you're going to have a gap. So you have to do your planning really carefully and sort of titrate when you're really pushing for new opportunities. In this particular situation, you have a couple of different options. One is you can use the pending end of your contract to try to negotiate a new contract. So one option is, for example, last year around this time with my client, I'd said, my contract is ending in December. And so now is really the time for me to start preparing and looking for other opportunities. So just wanted to see if you felt that there are any other projects that are coming up that I could help to support here at Gavi, or otherwise, I will be reaching out and trying to look for some other work. And just being frank about it, it can be a chance to actually extend your contract. In that case, I had a year-long extension to my contract. You can be open about it, and they know your contract is ending. It's not a mystery to them. So it's also about how you have that communication with them as a client. And you can also still work your network in the meantime. So start having those conversations, start gauging what's out there. You don't necessarily have to put a big open to work on your LinkedIn at that particular time, but you can start having conversations about what opportunities might be coming along the way.
Yeah, definitely. And, also saying, I'd be happy to work with you. I have availability from this time onwards. It's a great way to phrase it. And it also shows that, people want you, they want your skills, they want your work, and you're busy. So it's not a bad position to be in, I think. And phrasing it that way is a friendly way of saying, I'm available. This is just my timeline. Great. So thank you. We're going to wrap up now. Thank you all so much for being here. These were great questions. There are some questions that we didn't manage to get to. We'll make sure to answer them in the email that we sent with the recording. So you'll be getting that tomorrow. You can watch the recording again. Continue doing the exercises. If you're inspired right now, please continue with that list that you started with people that you know. And if you're ready, and if you know this is the right step for you, and you want that accountability, and you want that someone walking with you in this path, please sign up to the course. We're really excited about launching this. We're really excited about getting to know people a little bit more in depth and being able to support them. If you're not sure yet, feel free to book a call with us. We're happy to chat. You can do it. We've added the links. Julius has very kindly pinned the links. So you have all the links to sign up to the course or to book a chat with us. We really wish you all the success, whatever path you decide to take, and we're cheering you on. And Jamie, I'm going to give you the last word here.
Yes, but thank you all so much for coming and for spending this time with us. We're really happy to see such engagement and such excellent questions. And please do reach out and stay in touch. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.